Alright, welcome to the first day of the 5 Days of Dios. I'd like to start this video and start the week by showing some of the basic stuff that you're going to need if you want to build any of this kind of diorama stuff. I'm not going to go over this stuff every single day because it'll get repetitive and boring, so I'm just going to talk about it at the start of the week, and then if you have any other questions about that later on, you can leave comments or whatever the case about any specific things you might find. What I use primarily, you've seen everybody on Diostructure use this, is this foam insulation board. This variety is 1 inch thick by 2 feet by 8 feet. You can get thicker stuff, you can get thinner stuff. This is just the stuff that I work with because it's what I started with and it's what I know best, so I'm most familiar with it. Also, for doing detailing, that kind of stuff, I've got thinner pieces of foam. This is for either borders on like windows or doors, or just just like little accents on the pieces, depending on what kind of environment I'm trying to make. These are 2 different thicknesses here, so you'll see some of these pop up throughout the course of the week. I've used this stuff, this grid. I think this is used for knitting. What do they call it? Plastic canvas, they're calling this. You can find this any like Michael's or arts and crafts store, any of that kind of stuff. By the way, this board you can find at like Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of stuff. And then the thinner foam sheets that I just showed, you can get at the same place as the grid, like any kind of arts and crafts store. You're going to need a straight edge. I use a big long metal ruler just so I can, trace out where I'm supposed to go as far as making my cuts, and I also trace my designs and stuff with that, make sure everything is straight. For cutting, I mostly just use a utility blade. I've seen people on Diostructure who use X-Acto knives. Basically just try a bunch of different stuff, see what works best for you. This gets me the cleanest cuts, and I do have an X-Acto knife here that I just use for, detailing purposes, I guess. I'm not trying to hack through the entire board with this, but this is what I use to cut out a lot of the magnets and stuff that I use to hold the dials together. This is the kind of paint I use. Apple Barrel, not specifically this brand, but this just acrylic. Cheap, 59 cents or whatever at Walmart. You can get this stuff basically anywhere. You can mix it up, change your colors around. What I do is I'll just put a little bit on this folder, and then I'll get my paint brushes and start going to town. Also got this stuff too, this gutter mesh type stuff. I'm not sure specifically what you'd call it, but I got this at Home Depot, I think. I've seen people use this for fencing. I think Slings of Web might have been the first one I saw on YouTube use this, and I know other people have since. You can get metal mesh stuff like this. I got the plastic just in case I want to paint it a different color or leave it black depending on what I'm going to use it for. But yeah, your preference really. And lastly, this is what I'm using to seal it. Podge matte sealer. A lot of times I don't seal dios that I know I'm just going to keep, but if I plan on selling it down the line, or if I'm making a dio for somebody else, I'll seal it up. That way it just resists damage a little better, and you don't have to worry so much about paint chipping or anything like that. So now that I've explained the basics, let's show you the first dio of the week. So here's the first diorama we're going to have a look at this week. It's basically just a alleyway setting, urban street corner, whatever you want to call it. If you're on the Diostructure page on Facebook, well, if you're not, you should be, first of all. But if you are, you've seen 100 dials very, very similar to this. This is kind of what people usually cut their teeth on when they're making their first dials of their own. And I've made a couple of these. I made one very similar to this that I wound up selling a couple months back, so I wanted to make another one. I'll show a picture of the old one. So you can see the differences between that one and this one. That's the beauty of these kind of things, is even if you're making something very similar, you can always find ways to make it different and stand apart from the last one you made. Aquaman's in here for scale purposes. He's a 6-inch DC Universe Classics figure, and you can see he fits perfectly in terms of scale. I was going to say he fits perfectly in this environment, but that's a lie. He's nowhere near the water. This time around I didn't do as much with the actual brickwork because it takes a long time to carve bricks and do all that kind of stuff. So I just went with the cement, kind of like going the most of the way around. What I wanted to do though is it was going to look plain if I just left it as nothing but cement. So I printed out some posters. I found a bunch on Google Images and stuff of different music posters. That way it gives it kind of the feel of maybe the backstage of like a concert venue or something like that. And I added in like the authorized personnel thing on the door. Basically what I did with these was I printed them out, I cut them out, and then dipped them in black coffee for not long, like only a second or two, and that got them faded enough and made it look like they were kind of dingy and been hanging in an alley for however long. Also, that gives you the option of tearing off corners and fraying them a little bit when they're wet. It's easier to manipulate stuff like that. You can see a little tear in the corner up here. What I also did when I glued it down was fold over the top corners too, so it looked like they've been hanging there for a long time and they're like falling off the wall. But then once they're out of the black coffee, you pat them dry, and then I took a blow dryer to them and did that, so that way they're completely dry. Then I smeared glue on the back of them, just regular white Elmer's glue, and flattened them out against the dial. You don't want to just make like a sloppy pattern of glue and then slap it up there, because the glue will show through the back of it, and you'll see like the glue basically will be pushing parts of it forward. It'll just look like a mess. So a thin layer of glue across the whole back, that's how you do it. As you saw in the picture of my other dial that was similar to this door is different from that. That one had kind of a cutaway with a screen with that same mesh I showed that people make fences out of. This one is different. This one's not cut out at all. These are thin strips of that really thin foam that I showed at the beginning of the video, as well as this and the front part of this. The back part of this door handle is just a thicker strip of the white foam that I showed out there. So I glued the two together, painted them silver, and put them on the door. So that way you have a nice little kick plate there, you got the handle of the door, and then you got the frame. I could have just as easily cut this detail into the dial, but I like having a little bit of the texture here. And then the sign, I did the same way as the the posters on the wall here. But yeah, this is a very common type diorama to see on Dial Structure, and since Dial Structure is in essence a sister to the Articulated Comic Book Art page on Facebook, you see a lot of ACBA shots with figures in environments such as this. Where appropriate, of course. You're not going to do like I did and have Aquaman be in here, because that makes no sense. One of the beautiful things about Dial Structure, a tip I learned from watching Al Figures, is these are all held together by magnets. You can see that in the corner. They're in the bottom corners of these pieces as well. So it all comes apart very easily. That makes it easy to store and easy to reassemble anytime I want to pop this thing back together. So that's been a look at this diorama. I didn't say the measurements of it, but this is 12 by 12 by 12, meaning the base is 1 foot by 1 foot, and then this wall is 12 by 11, and then I make up the last inch by having it stand on there, so this whole thing measures 12. And then this back wall is 11 by 11, and it makes up the last inch on both sides by having this wall and the base. So this thing will fit in whatever kind of curio or shelf you might have that's, 1 foot by 1 foot, basically, dimension-wise. So this is a nice piece, I think. It's pretty versatile. You can do a lot with it. You can throw props in it and decorate it up, or you can leave it plain like this and just display figures, whatever it is you want to do. But as I mentioned, very popular among ACBA, among Dial Structure, to see pieces like this. Throughout the week, I'm going to showcase a few different pieces, some similar settings to this, and others that are very, kind of unique and different. You'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is day 1 of the 5 Days of Dials. Check back tomorrow for a brand new video. All right, later on.